Welcome back to Legal Luminaries, brought to you by the American Association for Paralegal Education, your guiding light in the realm of paralegal scholarship and practice. As we delve into Episode 3, we explore the latest trends and insights shaping the future of the paralegal profession. This episode focuses on technology-based insights and business expertise, providing staffing and project management services related to litigation, investigations, mergers and acquisitions, contract analysis, and more. We discuss the importance of understanding the business side of legal operations, the critical role of ongoing learning, and the personal journeys that shape legal careers. Our conversation highlights the significance of relationship building, effective communication, and staying current with technological advancements. We also touch on practical strategies to bridge the gap between paralegal education and the demands of the modern legal workforce, emphasizing durable skills such as critical thinking, leadership, and professionalism. Join us as we navigate the challenges and triumphs of the paralegal world, enriching the tapestry of legal education and practice. This is Legal Luminaries. Welcome to episode number 3.
Welcome back. We are excited for today's interview. AFP's podcast, Legal Luminaries, shines a spotlight on the insights, trends, and voices shaping the future of paralegal education and the legal profession. Legal Luminaries is designed to connect you with thought leaders, innovators, and trailblazers in the legal field. With me today is my co-host and fellow paralegal educator, Kelly Radnathy. Our guests today are Chief Revenue Officer Michael Harris and President and Chief Operating Officer Bob Roberts of Brightline Counsel, who are focused on technology-based insights and business expertise to provide staffing and project management services related to litigation, investigations, mergers and acquisitions, contract analysis, and more. So welcome, Mike and Bob. Would you please share with us briefly about your backgrounds?
Hey, everybody. How you doing? This is Mike Harris. So I guess I say I'm a jack of all trades. I was a biochemistry undergrad, went to law school, practiced law for a while, and now I'm left the law firm and I'm on the actual legal service provider side because, there's something that we saw that, there's a need in the industry to help professionalize some of the things that go around the alternative legal service provider. So that's my journey into how I got to where I am now.
Yep. And my name is Bob Roberts. As you said, I'm the president of Brightline Counsel. Prior to starting this company, I've been in the alternative legal service provider space since about December of 2011. Prior to that, I practiced law in law firm settings and for the government for about 7 years.
Awesome. Thanks. And I love that you all have that attorney training and background, and that just brings a wealth of information for our discussion today. And we had a previous discussion from today's episode where we really started getting in and leaning into this topic of a blog post that Brightline posted, and it was titled Top 5 Ways Paralegals Are Underutilized. And Kelly and I, as paralegal educators, we focus a lot of our coaching and education with our students on relationship building, which is what we talk about as a durable skill, formerly known as a soft skill. But we know that is extremely important, right, for the success of even in your line of work, right, with your placements, the people that you recruit and put in these positions. And I wanted to, for the audience who hasn't read this and had the benefit of reading this blog post, I wanted to highlight an excerpt out of that blog post, especially under building strong relationships with paralegals, right? And it says here in that blog, fostering more productive partnerships with paralegals goes beyond simple respect and acknowledgement, but it's an excellent place to start. It's necessary to continue checking in with paralegals to discuss opportunities for career growth or training resources. These advancements can reflect within the firm's own goals as well. For example, if the managing partners want to explore the possibility of adding a practice area, check in with the paralegals on staff to gauge interest and provide the necessary tools to facilitate the transition. As folks in the legal staffing industry, this is my question to you. What are some recommendations that you have for us as educators to prepare our students, our graduates, for the present day needs and expectations of employers?
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I guess one of the things that we see that there's a huge need for and understanding is, understanding the business side of legal. There's been a push lately with all the legal operations and movement to say legal is a business, and lawyers are some of the slowest to adapt. Whether it's technology, business, lawyers are set in their ways. So, we think that if paralegals have, some grounding in understanding of the business side, whether it's, the use of billing software or use of certain different software, database management software, or even, alternative fee arrangements. Those are the types of things that, paralegals can come in, assist with, transitioning a firm to that running more efficiently as a business. So from that standpoint, as educators, if you can have paralegals start to think, how is this legal operation running as a business? Because at the end of the day, law firms are still a business. Yes, they provide law, but they are a business.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think on top of that, whether you're a lawyer or a paralegal or legal assistant, whatever the title may be, legal professionals, this is a service industry. So whether you're serving your in-house team or your law firm team or your clients directly, just understanding that, there is a level of service that is going to be needed in that. So, don't just do the task at hand. It's always better to really consider, okay, well, I'm drafting this brief, but why? What does it mean to my client? What does it mean to the other side? What does it mean to the attorney? How do I help them? So just really keeping in mind that there's more to any task than the task itself. Just kind of think holistically about what the role is.
Yeah, I love that. Back in that Bright Lines blog post, you discuss this untapped expertise. So, beyond simply this setting that we're talking about, the communication also seems to be a resounding theme here. So our primary audience is composed of paralegal program directors and educators. So, we're wondering, what trends and developments are you really seeing in this front when we're thinking of placing the most competitive talent into the workforce?
So I think one of the biggest things everybody is talking about now is technology, right? Just being able to embrace technology and get exposure to technologies. Obviously, the more exposure you can get, the more familiar you have, the better an interview is going to go, the better you're positioning yourself to have an opportunity to get placed. So we're seeing a lot of folks wanting to talk about technology. Specialization is another thing that we're seeing. I don't know if you all are seeing the same thing. Whether or not the task, if there's ways to get additional certifications to beef up your resume, even if it's not real world work experience. If you can, there's any number of professional organizations, paralegal associations here locally in Cincinnati. There's a very vibrant paralegal association. They do, wills for first responders and that sort of thing. And that's, you could do that in school. You don't need to have, your any certificate or anything like that in order to get that experience. So
yeah, we definitely are seeing those trends, the specialization in technology, but we're also seeing trends that, quite frankly, it appears that there's going to be a shortage of paralegals. We've been talking to people about the consolidation of or closing and consolidation of some of the certification programs and making them more national programs. And, we're seeing that maybe this newer generation may not be cut out for what, traditionally paralegals were and the work that it required and attention to detail. So, we're seeing from what we've heard anecdotally is there are less people entering the pipeline. And, that is a question that we had of you guys. Are you seeing, less applications for like the knowledge certification or any other types of certification?
That's an interesting question, Mike, because we actually are seeing more people interested on the NALA side of things, like the certification, certified paralegal. We have heard, though, because Kelly and I are very active, obviously, with AFP and attending conference and so forth, we have heard some discussion about there being some attrition in some programs, and that's kind of regional specific because we've also, on the flip side, heard other programs becoming more vibrant, and there's more people signing up because they're curious and wanting to enter the field. So I think it can be a little bit tricky. Either it's regional specific, or I don't know if the messaging in those programs that are doing really well in terms of recruitment for people signing up for the program. So it's a little bit, that's an interesting question though. Like you said, anecdotally, yeah, sure, we're hearing that, but it would be interesting to see what the numbers actually tell us.
Right, and that's the thing is, because we're seeing those things, but we're actually seeing what you're seeing more too is there are more people getting into it because there are more opportunities. As we talked about with the business, there's more opportunities in the legal operations field where paralegals are coming in. Legal departments, their in-house departments are growing and adding more paralegals to be able to take on some more of the tasks that were traditionally either their outside counsel handling, or they had a more internal in-house counsel. And they're like, you know what? The paralegals can actually come in and run some of these things. So we're seeing a lot more people, a lot of openings in in-house counsels. We're seeing that because there's an increased, desire for efficiencies, we're seeing more paralegal work there because a lot of the work is being done, at a lower cost basis to the outside client through the law firms.
That's a very good point, Mike. And, actually, we're seeing this more and more. I actually have a group here in San Diego. We are small law firm legal operations professionals. And most of us, if not all of us, have started in a paralegal role many years ago. And most of us, I think, in that little group have something like 20 years of experience in law, starting as paralegals and kind of evolving into these legal operations roles for small law firms. So not only do we see that or hear that on the corporate side, because we're very familiar with clock or these legal operations, roles within legal departments, but more and more we are actually seeing this embedded within law firms. So that is a really cool thing for you to bring up. And, just kind of related to this too, because I think also, and I think Kelly's probably interested in this as well, in terms of how do we teach these things? How do we teach these folks that we are training to be successful in their roles, to be curious? And I think it's a nice, healthy balance of substantive information. We have to know the law and understand the law, but that is a marriage, right? Coupled with what we refer to as durable skills. And I want to explore this a little bit more with you all today. And Kelly and I are, like I said, we're really both interested in developing these durable skills in our students and how to provide them with those skills so that it can help them succeed in these roles, such as these legal operations roles, or even in paralegal roles, and as they ascend in their careers. And we've identified critical thinking and leadership, amongst other durable skills that we embed in our course content are really mission critical to our students and graduate success. So as leaders in the legal industry, what do you perceive as the key knowledge and skills that paralegals need to excel in areas like project management, compliance, even e-discovery, what you all do? And then how can paralegal education programs incorporate these elements effectively? I want to know your thoughts.
Yeah, I think you touched it earlier. The word you hit that had the hair standing up on my head was soft skills. Soft skills go a long way with regard to paralegals when they're in there, because you can have the best understanding of case law and everything, but if you can't effectively communicate to your team or even elicit from the team what the specific or particular goals are, there's a big waste right there. So helping develop soft skills, helping develop, active listening, helping to develop those skills where you're saying, I'm anticipating what's going to be needed. I'm understanding what the client needs, or I'm understanding what the partner needs, and how do we problem solve? And as Bob said earlier, a holistic approach to it. It is not, I'm going to come in and do my one piece. I'm going to look at the overall picture and understand, A, how do I fit in? But B, how do we all fit in and work together and make sure that there's nothing that was falling through the gaps, but there's no redundancies and other people doing things that have already been done.
Yeah, and as you said earlier, I think that's exactly right. And then communication and collaboration, right? I mean, the practice of law is a team sport. Everybody gives their 2 cents, and you want to make sure that you're getting all the appropriate stakeholders, getting feedback. Everybody is talking about work ethic of the rising generation, I'll say, and just helping people understand that the practice of law it's a pretty intense environment typically, and understanding that there's there can be long hours, there's high expectations, being respectful of other people's time, and understanding that when time is money, as it is in, a lot of law firm settings, being prepared when you go into a meeting. And I don't know if you do that through role playing or create scenarios and seeing how folks react, but just having them in situations that they're going to be in real life and making sure that they're comfortable with that. Like I was talking to Mike the other day about, well, one of the things that used to drive me nuts was when somebody would come to me and say, okay, like, what's the task? What do I need to do here? And then I'd explain it, and they wouldn't have. It seems silly, but they wouldn't have a pen and paper. And so then they would come back and ask the exact same questions again. And again, when time is money, I like to think that I handled it very well, but not all attorneys are willing to explain things more than once. So just understanding, again, it's a service, whoever you're serving, it's a service industry. So I think attention to detail, preparedness, professionalism, communication, I think all of those are paramount.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Christine and I both, as, paralegal educators, we totally agree with this, skill set that we've often referred to as, like you mentioned, soft skills. We like the phrase durable skills, because we're really seeing that. And what we're also seeing is that these educational institutions are being forced to shift to now include not just new students, right? And very modernized new students, but also career transitioners. And so this might look like, survey type courses. So we're giving them a glimpse into the legal field so they understand what the necessary competencies and commitment of expectations might be, but also this generational bridge that we're going to be entering into this culture and the environment. And like you said, it's a service industry, right? So we have to have the client in mind. What service are we providing? So we look at that from back to that blog post we were talking about, where you mentioned this lack of respect. Can you share some insights on that and how it can relate to educational programs, really kind of bridging this gap for those that are going to be coming into the legal field?
Yeah, I think I hope it didn't come off as pure lack of respect. It was more underutilization, right? Understanding the resource you have available in these professionals, because every environment where I worked, the paralegals, legal assistants, they knew how to get things done. They understood the culture. They were, just not thinking that there's this hierarchy based on titles. I'm an attorney, I'm a partner, I'm an associate, you're a paralegal, you're a legal assistant. So that was more the focus is we've had real world experience seeing how much can be accomplished if you understand that and you afford the level of respect that individuals in these roles deserve. You can get a lot more done, and everybody can have much better results for their clients. So that was more of the hopefully the theme of the blog.
And part of the subtext of that is nomenclature sometimes gets into the way. So, whether it's a legal assistant or paralegal, there's, some people say they're interchangeable. Some say, well, no, one is this, one is that. And because there's different nomenclature and there's different expectations, the interpretation or estimation of what a paralegal can do sometimes is skewed by the managing partner or some of the associates. And because of that, a lot of the work that they are capable of doing is not pushed down to them. So I guess, and I speak of like the nomenclature being an issue. For instance, I look at NALA and I think that says National Association for Legal Assistants. And I go to the website and it says the Paralegal Association. So can you expand a little bit upon that as far as nomenclature? Like what, in an ideal world, what would you like everyone to know? Because I can tell you right now, at my old law firm, we didn't use paralegals. We had legal assistants, and some of those legal assistants did work almost as much as a first and second level associate. So people are capable of doing a lot, but I think the titles get in the way sometimes. So if you had the ideal situation, or what would you want every lawyer or every in-house counsel, what would you want them to know that a paralegal is? How would you describe it?
I love that. I love you putting those questions back on us, Mike. That is amazing. Because, and I'll give you a little context in history. I do have, and I have to share with our audience members because I am active with NALA as well. This is the historical context behind it. We did start off almost 50 years ago. Can you imagine? NALA is almost 50 years old. That's how old the profession is, right? I think that was how long ago when the ABA, the American Bar Association, actually first recognized the field, the profession of paralegals. And back then, I think this is more of a cultural shift, and then maybe now we're moving into more bright lines of these defined terms of what these legal professionals are. But you're right, it's kind of dependent sometimes on the law firm or the environment or the ecosystem where those folks are. But generally, with NALA, we've shifted more into adopting the term as defined by the ABA of paralegal. There is actually a definition of paralegal through the ABA. And that matters. Why? Okay, here it goes, right? It always relates back to what? The bottom line. It kind of says who can and can't bill for, this type of work. What is that level of work or expectation? Because here, and where I am situated in the state of California, we actually have a law in the books that impacts paralegals. It's under our California Business and Professions Code, Section 6450. There's 6 subsections under that. And it actually defines who's a paralegal in the state of California. So it's very specific because there is actually case law that impacts the outcome of attorney's fees, which paralegal fees fall under. So it's kind of like that cascading effect, depending, as we know, we're all legal folks here, depending on which state you're in and what the law says, and, also culture, what has been the historical context in your region or jurisdiction on that term. But as far as NALA is concerned, we're kind of moving more towards, so we used to have the designation CLA, which is Certified Legal Assistant. We're moving away from that term now to Certified Paralegal. And because we have been watching for the past several years now, these programs that are cropping up of legal practitioners, right? Limited license legal practice across, I don't know, it's something like, I've lost count now, something like 19 states across the country. So, as we all know, the law is evergreen. It's constantly changing. It's what I say to my students, right? The law is dynamic, not stagnant. It changes. It changes with the values of society. So, that was such a great question, Mike. But I'm going to turn the question back on you and say, I want to poke a little because you had mentioned technology, right? And as we all know, oh my gosh, it's like the hot topic at conference, and everyone's talking about it. Because I don't know why, but everyone's freaked out, panicked about this generative AI, and AI is going to take over the world. And I'm like, whoa, pump the brakes, relax a second. It's a tool, let's step back. I think the conversation really needs to revolve and evolve around, let's talk about policies, right? Maybe from state bar, big bar, level, or within, each state bar, figuring out and working with the judiciary. What does that look like as we interface, with AI and our legal cases? What is proper and ethical and professional use of AI within our cases? I think that's where the conversation probably should start heading. And I think I'm seeing those shifts happening. I'm seeing repositories of judicial orders around AI, because as we all know, we heard that horror story of that poor fellow, I think it was in Boston, where he didn't cite that he used AI in his brief, and the AI hallucinated and he got called out by the court. We hear all these horror stories about these things. So really, in my mind, just to kind of take a breath and step back and kind of look at what is happening here, maybe we need to kind of start focusing on those discussions and prioritizing that. But with that said, talking about technology, generative AI, and I'm really interested and curious, Mike, to hear your response to this, because, as lawyers, right, you have this kind of training and background and experience, especially being embedded within law firms, and you've shifted now into more of the legal provider space. But that's kind of the intersection of law, business, and technology, right? And this is actually something Kelly and I are very interested in, because how do we train that in our students, right? These are all intersections as they interface with legal professionals, specifically paralegals. What can we do, in your estimation, right, as folks who are staffing these folks who have to be prepared? I love what you said, Bob, right? It's professionalism, it's preparedness, it's having that emotional intelligence. The best professionals are an embodiment of those things, right? So what is it that we can do, in your folks' estimation, to ensure that our graduates are equipped to navigate these intersections very effectively?
Well, one of the things is, people, like you say, people say generative AI and people just run for the hills because it's so scary. A huge thing that can be done when teaching is demystifying legal technology. Just letting you know that it is not this obscure thing that you needed to have a master's degree in electrical engineering to understand, or else you're going to be run out the door. I mean, technology spans the gamut. It can be things like billing software. If a paralegal can understand billing software, because again, going to the business standpoint of it is the bills are how you get paid. If you bill, you give it to a client, but then there's also the invoicing software, because unless you do the work, give out the bills, unless the client pays, then the lights don't stay on. So there needs to be an understanding of all kinds of technology that starts from the beginning, with whether there's going to be a document review, how do you set up a repository, to how do you bill the client, to how do you invoice the client, to how do you make sure that the invoices are paid. And that sprinkles in the technology, that sprinkles in the business, that also sprinkles in some of the legal aspects of what you're doing. So, that's where we say demystify, just say, technology is here to help you, not replace you. Start with that conversation, and then start to talk about some of the technologies. I mean, there are a lot of ways of getting understanding about technology. Demos are one thing. I know we, as service providers, we work with a lot of technology and software companies who will provide a demo for you. They'll tell you what their tool does, or they'll claim what it does. You can vet it and make sure it does what it says. You can have CLEs, and Bob was discussing some of the other things earlier as well, with regard to a technology company and actually vetting, because they'll sell you a bill of goods, but it's up to, the paralegals to understand, whether that what they're selling actually works. And then that also, what that does is it makes them a valuable resource to the firm now. If they're able to understand the technology, understand the ability to vet it, then when it comes time to the firm adopting it, they are somewhat of a subject matter expert in it, where they can say, these are the three different tools we looked at. These are the pros and cons that I found for this one, and this one. If we go this way, that way. Again, it gives the paralegal more, footing on their importance within the firm. It gives them the ability to help the firm that typically lawyers are slow to adapt to embrace technology. So if you can help paralegals start with it, I think that'll help them go a long way.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly right. And I think just a general healthy curiosity, if you can foster curiosity in playing, I mean, it is playing with these tools and creating things, and because they all have the power to reduce stress, not replace you, to make you more efficient, to help you do your job quicker or better. So there's maybe more time to focus on other things. So I think Mike said it really, really well, and attorneys specifically tend to adopt technology very, very slowly. And so that's all opportunity for people that are now coming into the workforce, right? And I think the more that you can explain that and have them embrace that, you said it really well, Christine. It's a tool in the toolbox, but you want that tool in your toolbox because it's going to give you a lot of opportunities. So I think, again, just fostering curiosity around what this technology can do for you and your firm or your corporation would be beneficial.
I love these suggestions. And it's so relevant for Christine and I, because, well, as educators, first of all, we've also, as, paralegals, having been paralegals for so many years, I remember when I first had to learn concordance, and it was a learning curve, but I was the only one on a huge team that got it down and got comfortable with it. And so now to be able to share that sort of those stories from the trenches that I survived with the new potential workforce, so that dissemination of this accurate and timely information in areas that we know our students will absolutely need to succeed in this industry. So, that goes back to those durable skills that we're talking about. Yes, we can, demo projects and all of that, but at the core of this is, critical thinking and, the ability to generate curiosity and have an interest in something and want to know more. So with this common question that we kind of touched on a little earlier that students always ask us is, where do we get this magical 2 years of experience? Where does this unicorn exist? And all these job descriptions seem to require that, even though they're maybe entry level. So the student has no experience. So what are your thoughts on this, especially since you guys are both from the staffing side? What marketable skills can lead to securing a job or not, regardless of experience?
Well, I think on top of specialized legal knowledge or trying to get anything that is directly on par with what you think that they're looking for, we were just talking to a recruiter recently, and she had told a story about how prior work experience that is not legally related can still create and build uh, traits and characteristics that you want to see. The example was a gentleman that managed a Bob Evans, but he had talked about getting up early, making sure, that he was crossing his T's and dotting his I's and that the team was ready to go. And so you're seeing leadership and you're seeing communication, you're seeing collaboration. So I would say first and foremost, don't discount your previous life work experience. I mean, highlight it, use it to your advantage, because if you understand, read the job description very closely, take those pieces that they're looking for and just, talk about your former work experience and how it fits. And you do have that experience. And then on top of that, like we were saying, there's any number of organizations where you can volunteer. Not everybody likes to give away their time for free, but if you're trying to get experience, again, that Wills for First Responders thing is a good way to get experience. Reach out to your local organizations and see, what can I do? How can I volunteer? How can I get involved to create real world legal experience? Your career services department at your school is probably a great resource. What are the volunteer opportunities I can get? What are the ideally paid opportunities I can get, just to get any sort of experience while I'm still in school? And starting earlier, the earlier the better, right? Because again, the more you can have to sort of beef up your resume, the better.
Absolutely.
And also throw in, networking. Networking is huge. Networking goes a long way to securing a job, to moving up within a job, to getting more work while, even if you're already employed, to getting more opportunities and more projects, because people can, relate to you, see what your capabilities are. So networking. And I think that's one skill that, it wasn't taught to us as lawyers, and lawyers make some of the worst networkers. And that's troublesome, because a lot of their ability to get business and business development and actually communicate with the client is based off of your network and who you know and how you can leverage who you know to make things happen. And shameless plug again, Bob mentioned the association. I say NALA. I have a friend who's a part of NALA, and she actually got training on both networking and seeking a job through there. So she met someone who was a mentor in NALA, who then kind of sponsored her into another job, even though she didn't have that much experience. So those are the things that we would definitely push as new paralegals.
Yeah, I think that's a huge opportunity, and I know Mike just said it, so I hate to reiterate it, but that is another opportunity for paralegals, because I'm telling you, law schools don't talk about any of this stuff. They just don't. They don't talk about practical applications. They don't talk about networking. And then what you hear is like, I don't want to be in sales. But then as they climb the ladder, at some point, they're like, okay, you want to be a partner? Where's your book of business? And so just understanding the mechanics of that, and that, there's so many opportunities to get to know people, and Mike and I really enjoy meeting new folks and talking to new folks. And again, just fostering a collaborative social aspect to the education. I don't know how you do that exactly, but the more that you can really stress it, I think that there's a huge opportunity there.
I think you both draw the right lines, right, Cal? I think that, absolutely shout out to Nella, but even local paralegal associations, that's how Kelly and I met, through our local San Diego Paralegal Association service. So it's a great tip on top of like internships. If your programs offer internships, avail those. Make sure you get the hands-on practical application. That's what Bob and Mike are referring to. Yes, it's the knowledge, right? Of course, that's foundational, but it's the application of that knowledge which becomes very critical to your ability to, one, secure a job, right, with little to no experience, and to advance in that role. So having those connections, and the way that the framework that we like to give it is relationship building. The way I like to tell my students is, hey, you don't ask someone to marry you on your first date, right? You gotta build a relationship, right? That's mutual trust and respect, and building towards larger goals that mutually benefit all the parties. So having that mindset, but yeah, I love it. Another thing that my small firm legal ops group was talking about is absolutely what you honed in on, Bob, is sales. That is the lifeblood of any company. Hello, newsflash, law firms are businesses. So we don't have revenue. Hello, CRO and COO president. If we don't have revenue, we don't exist as a business, right? So it is absolutely important that we do talk about that, or at least I do in my introduction to law class. I don't know about you, Kelly, but I talk about it in my introduction to law class, how all of this works together. Because I do talk about billing and being a billable employee, a profit center inside of a law firm, but also what that looks like, because it's a little bit different. It's a little nuanced when you move into a legal department, because then you become a cost center. Legal is a cost center in a corporation. So it's kind of understanding the way everything works within your legal ecosystem. What is my role? What is my value add contribution thereof? So, I want to kind of touch back with you, Bob, on this, because you had mentioned about efficiency, right? And I know that you all are concerned when you are working on these managed review projects, compliance, understanding that there's accuracy, quality control, all of those measures, right, are built into your infrastructure, your workflows for these projects that you're working on for, I'm assuming, pretty substantial law firms. And I think about this too, because some of us who have really moved over into the paralegal educator role on a full-time basis, maybe even as directors of programs, how do folks like that stay on top of technology? Mike made a good point in saying, get the demos, right? But I wonder too, because technology changes so quickly, right? It iterates so almost a daily basis. I check my Zoom and I'm like, now what's changed? Where do I find this on the dash? And I teach on Zoom. So, and I wonder, like, what is it that we as paralegal educators can do for ourselves to stay on top of technology so we can inform our students and relay that information so they stay on the cutting edge of it to make themselves marketable?
Sure. So that's a great question. The issue and the challenge is, to your point exactly, there's just so much out there and it is evolving so quickly. And so we focus mainly on the people aspect of what we do. But part of our job is to then say, okay, since we're focused on the people, what are the tools that we should be using to help them do their job more efficiently, help them do their job better, and they all do different things. So we are constantly talking to other service providers, attending webinars. There's probably one right now. There's probably 10 right now. But there is and just talking to people, right? And again, I mean, I know we're going back to this relationship building, but it's key, because every service provider is going to tell you their tool is the solution to your problems. And you need to speak to folks that are actually using these things. And, what are you hearing in the marketplace? What is the biggest platform for X contract extractions or document review or billing software? I think leveraging your networks to help understand what people are using, and then actually taking the time to do a demo and learn about it. And then ideally, if you can, I mean, we don't have limitless time, but getting a sandbox which is just a dummy database where you can go in and play around with it and just see, can it do what I want it to do? How would I use this in a real world scenario? All of those things, to the extent time permits, are good ways to kind of get a better sense of what's out there.
And I would also ask, conferences. Conferences can be you can kill two birds with one stone. You can learn the information on the tech and also network. So if conferences make themselves available to you, I know there's, on the East Coast, we have Legal Week, or it used to be Legal Tech, now it's Legal Week. There's ILTA that travels around the country. Those are places where you can go into a demo hall, you can see, several different things. You can do a side-by-side comparison. You can leave one booth that tells you can document repository can do X, and go to the next booth and say, how does this compare with that one? So you can find out how these different software, how they work, an understanding of the power of what they can do. And while you're there, you can network. You can meet other people who actively use it, and they can tell you what their experience is based off what's being sold at a trade show. So those are a couple of different ways that you can, become more competitive and understand, and stay on top of the technology within law.
Yep, I love that. And especially Christine and I are like the biggest cheerleaders. We like head of the cheerleader squad for networking in general. And because truthfully, that's where opportunity lies, because oftentimes we may be presented with learning a technology or learning a new specialty or X, Y, and Z for any particular case. And so then we have this space through networking, whether it's a conference or a webinar or a meeting, of the association, whatever it may be. And you have this opportunity to discuss the nuances and the unique, encounters that you've been encountering in your practice. And this helps us to all understand clients' needs, different clients' needs, which every client is unique. And so we can talk about it, grow that community, grow that connection, this relational building with not just our colleagues and, other paralegals in our world, but also the vendors of all of the softwares and tools that we might utilize or might not know about. And we hear from our colleague at this event. And so understanding, like in the context of paralegal education, we must foster that client-centric approach, right? Because that's where legal services are. That's what it is. So how do we ensure the graduates, though, are adept at meeting these diverse needs of both the legal professionals, right, that we're going to be working with, but also the organizations that we're going to be supporting internally and externally? How do you think, like, what advice do we give our students? How can we share thoughts or insights on to be competitive, like Christine, in this tight employment market?
I guess one of the biggest things that we say is be flexible, be willing to try new things, be willing to, step outside of the four walls of what you may have learned in your certification program and say, okay, I'm legal research, got it, legal writing, on it, site checking, there. But when the opportunity arises to do something else, like whether it's, an immigration and there's a change in the law on work visas, understand that. Take a CLE. Learn a little bit more about, and especially if you're going in a specialized industry, learn a little bit more about what's changed in the industry, and then become pretty much a subject matter expert based off of understanding change in laws. There are all kinds of different aggregators out there, like JD Supra and law.com, that aggregate specific subject matters that you can sign up for, and you get an email every day with 3 or 4 different articles. Always continue to learn, always continue to read. Find what you're passionate about. Find something that you can get behind and do, and take the leadership role and be on the forefront to step out there and say, I read an article about this. I think we can, the firm is in this subject matter. Here's some things that affect us. We need to explore and make sure that we are following the latest and greatest, rules and regulations that came out. All of the new forms or new processes with the change of administrations, you have different ways things are done. So stay abreast of that, whether it's a political climate, whether it's a legal climate. Make sure that you are, staying aware of what's affecting your practice area, your practice group. And even if it's not in your practice area or your practice group, what's affecting your firm or corporation, because that could come across your desk at some point, and it would be nice to be prepared and be able to take it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think that, understanding that any unknown thing like technology or Kelly, I think it was concordance, that had nobody knew how to use it. The second you figured out how to use it for everyone, you became invaluable, right? And so just having people understand, embrace new opportunities, because you can, I think people, lawyers and other legal professionals, just get very task oriented. This is what I'm asked to do. I'm going to execute on that. But it seems like you guys, based on what we're saying here, do a really good job of saying, okay, but what's your value here? Yes, but you can hire 15 different people to shepherdize case law, or and especially with technology these days, all of these tasks can be done a million different ways. But why are you doing it? What's the value, right? And understanding that, and creating where I'm thinking, what am I bringing to the table? Instead of what is the task that I'm being asked to do. I think if you can foster that kind of sort of holistic, again, approach to seeing what they're being asked to do, I think that would really serve them well long term.
Stellar advice, Mike and Bob, seriously. And, if I may take the liberty in my own pro tip, I like saying this to the students too. If you have an opportunity, because so many of us, especially in entry-level roles, land in some sort of civil litigation or litigation adjacent type role, right? Because some people go into family law, which still has elements of litigation embedded into their workflows and practice. And I love this kind of holistic thinking. And I like to coach my students to think of themselves As project managers, start with the end in mind, milestone back, what we have talked about in past conversations is reverse engineering, right? But going to a trial, actually seeing how all of these pieces work together, from my whole pre-litigation through the discovery fact finding, through, pre-motion and motion work up to trial prep, and seeing how that comes all together at trial presentation, and see how that works out even through appeal, because then you see the fruits of your labor. So understanding and having that big picture in mind, great, stellar advice. I love that. And Kelly too, with how do we work with others within our own, internal teams, but also that external outward facing, because a lot of us do have interaction with clients and even outside folks, collaborators, in order to facilitate and move the ball forward in our cases. So stellar advice, Mike and Bob. I kind of, in winding down our conversation, got a lot of stuff. You got the wheels turning in my head. I feel like I could sit here and talk to you for another 3 hours, but we won't do that. I kind of want to think about, being prognosticators of the paralegal profession. So let's all pull out our crystal balls, right? And think about that. What do we see? What do you folks see as the future? What does the future hold for paralegals? Curious.
I guess we see that from our crystal ball, and what we think is we're going to see a more importance and reliance on the abilities of paralegals, because I think people are moving away with the titles, because titles can be limiting. We're seeing that they're looking at your actual ability. So that's where we say that the flexibility comes in, because it's new territory. Technology is equalizing or leveling the playing field for everybody. So it allows people to do more with less. So that's where, from a crystal ball standpoint, we see paralegals taking more from a cost efficiency standpoint, from, taking things internal, like in-house counsel, or, corporate legal departments doing more. Even paralegal work with alternative legal service providers. We've seen a big shift towards that one, because again, they can do some of the works that law firms are doing. They won't cut law firms out completely, but they will be working on those aspects that law firms typically do, but they'll be doing it at a more efficient cost rate.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. The biggest thing is, if you read the studies, from like Altman Weil or Thomson Reuters, or just when they talk to in-house counsel about opportunities and that sort of, everybody is trying to, that's why companies like ours exist. Everybody's trying to keep costs down, to identify efficiencies. And so I think the sky's the limit for paralegals moving forward, because legal operations, as we've been kind of alluding to, it's this new evolving sort of area, and that those folks are becoming leaders of, entire service lines, right? And they're just, all they're doing is finding ways to leverage more technologies and save more money and do things more efficiently. Just that evolution, right? That didn't even exist not that long ago. It just provides so many different opportunities. Like Mike and I, we practice law, and now we're doing something completely different because we enjoy it. So just always, understanding that just because, I am, my title is paralegal, my title is legal assistant, you can do anything, right? It's just like law school. It's a really good, they say they teach you how to think like a lawyer. Well, you're learning how to think like a lawyer. It's a valuable skill, but you can apply it to any number of different roles and opportunities. And so I think the sky's the limit moving forward.
Well, thank you so much, Mike and Bob, for shedding light on the power of networking, both in education and relationship building. We appreciate your emphasis on how technology and business knowledge can improve business operations for those in the legal space. To our listeners, we appreciate you joining us on this episode of AFP's Legal Luminaries. We hope our conversation today has sparked some contemplation on the profound impact of how we can all improve our practice in technology education and its impacts on the legal profession. For those eager to explore further, we've included some relevant links in the show notes below, and a special acknowledgement to Doug Lusk of the National Society for Legal Technology for his invaluable contributions to the post-production of this podcast. As we wrap up, we leave you with a thought-provoking question. So if you had 20 minutes to interview anybody, who would you choose to speak with? We encourage you to share your thoughts and your suggestions with us. And thank you once again. We look forward to having you with us on the next episode of AFP's Legal Luminaries. Until then, keep those connections and building relationships that illuminate the legal landscape. Goodbye for now.